Hello there, folks. Yo soy Alonso y están escuchando el podcast del Salón de Idiomas. Bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio del podcast del Salón de Idiomas, donde hablamos de los exámenes oficiales, de inglés y de otros temas de interés. Y bueno, para el episodio de hoy vamos a hablar de una prueba muy concreta, pero que da bastantes quebraderos de cabeza a los docentes opositores de inglés. El ejercicio práctico. Y Rox está de nuevo aquí con nosotros para ayudarnos a entender esto un poquito mejor. Hello, Rox.
Hi guys, how are you?
So now, as usual, we're going to start a little interview as well in English. And first of all, what is the ejercicio práctico?
Okay, so if you are a teacher or aspiring to be a civil servant, you have to do this civil servant exam for being a teacher and for being a teacher who works in public schools. If you are going to be an English teacher, both for primary and secondary education, one of these exams is this practical part because you have other exams. And this practical part is the one we're actually talking about, in Spanish called the Ejercicio Práctico. And it's pretty difficult. So far, it's been compulsory. Now, this year is quite controversial though, and supposedly in the near future, it might not be a compulsory part of these exams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that was basically what I heard from it, that it was becoming rather controversial. Now, in your opinion, do you think that its days are numbered or?
I'm pretty sure. Now, of course, it depends on the community. In Madrid, they call it Ejercicio Práctico. It has a specific structure. And in the end, it's going to be this community who decides, or which decides, whether it's going to keep being for the future exams, for the future civil servant exams, which is basically every other year. I'm pretty sure in the future, it might not be something compulsory, but you might have it as an optional exam if you want to raise your grade in this whole process of the civil servant exam.
So I guess that it will remain being worth it to take this test to some extent. That's great. Well, and why do you think that this measure has been taken?
Well, actually, it's pretty easy. I mean, the Union of Teachers has been trying to negotiate this with the Ministry of Education. And I think most of the reasons, among different things, okay, not just this aspect of the exam. For starters, it's a pretty difficult test to do. And it might, to some people, it might not really show your full capacities as a teacher, just because you have to perform, you have to do this exam in English. And it's not such or perhaps for those of you who are listening and have done already these exams, you might agree with me that it's not a piece of cake. And sometimes it's not just about your knowledge of English, but as well of your mental acuity, if you know what I mean. Because to a certain extent, it's done for you to encounter it really difficult.
So far it sounds like this is the most challenging thing ever. I gotta ask you, what are the parts of it?
Yeah, so for the teachers and for those aspiring English teachers to work as a civil servant, indeed, it's been one of the most difficult parts. It consists mainly, and the most important skill, and the one which is higher graded, is the listening skill. Now, this is difficult for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it may have specific content with, the pronunciation and intonation of those speaking might be pretty difficult to digest. And on the other hand, you might be, the exercises belonging to the listening might be so intrinsicate. For example, within the same listening exercise, you might have to decide whether some statements are true or false. Or you might have to come up with synonym for specific words within the listening. Or you might even have to do multiple choice or fill in the gaps. All these in just one single exercise of listening. So indeed, your mental skills and abilities might have to run the extra mile there. And you kind of put all your eggs in a basket with this exam so far.
Yeah, I mean, what you're telling me, it doesn't sound that, really weird. It's actually the things that go in every single kind of test, like true or false, which is the correct answer and all that. However, I gotta say that changing your mindset while you're listening to the same thing and trying to change the strategy, definitely takes some effort to adapt to that. I guess that's why it's so mind-boggling. Yeah.
It is, because in the end you have to, it's not just about doing the same exercise. You might be asked open questions and true and false within the same exercise. So your concentration levels have to be really high to be able to properly perform in this exercise, indeed. And that's just the listening. Now, if you move on to the reading, that's another interesting part as well. It's highly graded, and not as high as the listening, though it's as well an important part. And over here, you might be asked questions regarding the test per se, like what does the author mean with this sentence, or even come up with a metaphor you might encounter in the text, or even, and that's the funny thing, you might have to answer use of English related questions within this reading exercise, or even linguistic questions. Now, guys, don't stress out with linguistic question. What I mean is perhaps you're asked to do a phonetic transcription or to come up with the semantic field or a specific word. So all this mixture of different approaches might be encountered in this reading exercise. And then the last part is the didactic part. Some years ago, used to be higher graded. Right now, I think it's just 1 point over the whole score you might be given in the exam. And this is, basically some practical knowledge of what the teachers already have to master in terms of education, in terms of concepts of education, authors, methodologies, how you can grade a student, or how would you make your lesson plan, or how would you define specific words belonging to this, or even explain the new law of education. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a bunch to digest.
So no wonder they are kind of negotiating whether it's going to still be such an important part of this civil service exam, or it might be just an optional thing for those candidates who want to upgrade their final score.
From your perspective, is it actually, justified that this is the way that it is? Why? This is so difficult for this reason? Do you think that that's justified, or is just due to the fact that the designer of this test is an extremely creative person?
It might be both. Well, in the end, as everything, they're a huge range of people presenting to this civil service exam. And in the end, you need to have some filters, right? So this is one of them. You need to have certain certificates in English, wide experience in English, not just experience in your teaching practices. It might not be English, it might be any other, depending on the civil service exam you're actually doing. You might be just a music teacher, so you don't have this English exam, but you have other exams, like practical exams. So I guess that the reason of the existence of this exam is basically because it's just another filter to play out candidates.
Yeah, well, I guess that sounds a little evil, but well, it makes sense to some extent. So another thing is, what should people bear in mind besides, that this is really tough when they are preparing for this test?
Okay, well, just for you to know, it's not impossible. The more you master English, the better. Okay, now you need to take into account a couple of things. The first one will be, obviously, to be proficient in English. That means you should, your listening skills and your reading skills should be really well trained. And on the other hand, you really need to be quick-witted. You know what I mean? Your mental alertness to be really high. So a constant training and a constant exposure to English, to podcasts in English, real podcasts, not just material adapted for exams, but real podcasts, real material, might help you to develop these skills which are required for actually passing this exam. Yeah.
Okay, great. And how do you sort out the classroom when you are teaching this?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we usually start with the listening part, which is the most difficult part. The exams are given to our students just a couple of hours before the class, so they have enough time to print the exam, because we're talking about online lessons. With all the pandemic, 90% of the lessons we have are online. We do have some classes in the school as well. What we try to do is not to hand in these exams with enough time for them to look over and to look at. It's basically to encounter themselves in the same situation they're gonna find themselves once they do the exam in June. So we give them the exams with this short notice just before the class starts. Then with the listening part, depending on how well they perform the listenings, we might give them tips and advice on how to work with these different parts of the listening, where the clue was. And we worked on trying to understand why those answers were the real ones, or why could have been done badly or wrongly in the first place, what they could have done wrong. Then we work together the reading part. It's not just an individual work. Sometimes it's a group or collaborative work where, because these classes are prepared in groups, where they give their versions. We explain to them certain concepts, as I told you before, those linguistic concepts, the semantics, the phonetics, or even the pragmatics. And then we do the didactics, which is the last part. And this is really fruitful. When you have a group of people preparing for the same exam, it's really, really fruitful having the opinion of the others. Because as you know, in these exams, we have people who are really well prepared, whereas others are just, I'm going to try it, and may lack of knowledge. And this is the best part, where you can get insights from other people's opinion, from your classmates' opinion, and we give them other pieces of information. And in the end, it's a kind of a teamwork, where they have to work with this stress and difficult exams as the ones they can encounter in the real life. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems that these classes are as thorough as the entire test. So I guess that this is pretty much your concept of these classes, is kind of like going to the gym and no pain, no gain.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the end, it's a matter of practicing. It's a matter of practicing. In other exams, I think you were talking with other teachers about, APTIS and LanguageCert. In those exams, you just prepare, how to prepare for those specific exams, and you're pretty likely to pass them, once you do them for the first time. Now, in this other exam, which is pretty difficult, in the end, it's a civil service exam. And over here, it's a matter of training. So the longer you train, the better. I'm not saying that you have to join my classes, but I'm saying that if you start preparing for these exams, make sure that you prepare with at least 2 years in advance. You should be exposed to difficult English on a daily basis. And you should work on your mental acuity almost on a daily basis as well. So, yeah, that's mostly it.
So you gotta develop an entire relationship with this. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that's all for it today. I am grateful for having you here today again. I really was completely clueless about this, and now I'm a bit aware of that, and now our listeners are probably going to be thankful as well.
I hope, and I really hope that the outcomes, at least this year, are going to be positive, and that the higher number of people are able to get the higher score as well in these exams. So good luck, guys.
Okay, thank you so much for coming today, Rox.
Thank you.
And now, as usual, I'm gonna switch to Spanish. And sí, y bueno, pues para último, ¿qué te gustaría decirnos a los que nos escuchan para de repente algo que quieran tener en cuenta antes de prepararse para esto?
Pues nada, que al igual que las otras partes de las oposiciones, es un ejercicio que no debería descuidarse para nada, simplemente porque creas que tienes suficiente nivel o bien porque has vivido en el extranjero o lo que sea. Incluso un nativo se puede encontrar este examen bastante difícil. Entonces, porque como mencionaba, habla de la agilidad mental muchas veces, o ya no simplemente del conocimiento per se de la lengua, ¿no? Entonces, una exposición constante, creo que estoy haciendo un calco aquí del inglés, pero el estar constantemente expuesto al idioma, o bien como había dicho, escuchando podcasts sobre educación, o no solo, o sea, cualquier tema. Hemos visto que en convocatorias anteriores ya los listenings no estaban relacionados con la educación. Entonces, pues eso, estar expuesto al idioma constantemente y trabajar esa alerta mental es fundamental para poder ir bien preparado. Y obviamente, pues que tengas precisamente que ese sea un día que sea tu día, ¿vale? Porque a veces puedes ir muy preparado por lo que sea, no llegas a controlar los nervios, estás un poquito o te encuentras mal por lo que sea y puede jugarte una mala pasada. Esto no lo podemos controlar, bueno, el de los nervios sí, pero lo que sí sabemos es que la práctica, al igual que se dice en inglés, practice makes perfect. Cuanto más practiques, muchísimo mejor. Y bueno, sobre todo que no os desaniméis, porque la verdad es que se aprende muchísimo con este examen. Preparándolo se aprende muchísimo. Y al final acabas, de hecho lo decían alumnos, ¿no?, en convocatorias anteriores, es que acabas teniendo tantos conocimientos que te sirven incluso para poder aplicar en la vida real o bueno, si luego te da por hacer cualquier otro examen también, ¿no?
Bueno, eso sí, me encanta, eso suena estupendo. La verdad es que sí, si preparas tanto de tantos temas tan diversos, pues terminas haciendo algo bien útil después. Excelente, muchísimas gracias por venir, Rox, y seguramente te tendré aquí en otra oportunidad.
Espero que sí, porque estoy disfrutando muchísimo con estos podcasts. Y nada, gracias por tenerme aquí.
Chao. Gracias a ti. Muy bien, y después de esta entrevista, ya que estuvo un poco larga, lo que vamos a hacer ahora es que yo voy a volver después de un pequeño break para que podamos ver algunas expresiones y que podamos entender esta entrevista un poquito mejor. Así que ya volvemos. Aquí estoy de vuelta y vamos a empezar a explicar un poquito esta entrevista que tiene muchísimo de qué hablar. Rox nos explica que este examen lo han de hacer los maestros y profesores de inglés, tanto de primaria como de secundaria. La prueba es tanto difícil como obligatoria, así como un poco polémica y que tal vez deje de ser obligatoria en el futuro, por lo que yo le pregunto a Rox, ¿Do you think that its days are numbered? ¿O crees que sus días están contados? Esta expresión curiosamente se le ha atribuido a Shakespeare o incluso a la Biblia, pero realmente fue Reginald Scott en 1584 quien en su libro The Discovery of Witchcraft la utilizó por primera vez. Y bueno, volviendo al audio, Rox nos responde que probablemente así sea, pero que igual esta decisión depende de cada comunidad autónoma. De todas maneras, igual piensa que se mantendrá relevante para subir la media en las oposiciones. Rox nos comenta luego que probablemente la decisión de prescindir de este examen se tomó debido a, por un lado, su alta dificultad y por otro lado, el hecho de que quizás no muestre la capacidad real de los maestros de su dominio de idioma, al ser particularmente desafiante. Muchos que lo han hecho saben que no es a piece of cake, no es pan comido, y que pone a prueba no solo tus conocimientos del idioma, sino también tu agudeza mental. Luego Rox nos explica que el listening de este examen es particularmente complicado, ya que por un lado la entonación y pronunciación es difícil de digerir. Por otro lado, los ejercicios pueden ser considerablemente complejos, ya que, por ejemplo, en un solo ejercicio puedes tener tareas de verdadero y falso o de selección simple, buscar sinónimos para una palabra en concreto o llenar los espacios en blanco, por lo que sin duda estos planteamientos en la prueba requieren que nuestras habilidades mentales run the extra mile o que hagan un esfuerzo extra para lograr superar esta prueba. Y es que estar cambiando tanto tu estrategia lo hace bastante mind-boggling o confuso. Ahora con respecto a la parte del reading, resulta que también es muy interesante. Me imagino que Rox no quiso sonar más apocalíptica y decir que también es difícil. Aquí se tiene que responder preguntas sobre el texto, como por ejemplo explicar el significado de una oración, buscar metáforas y hacer tareas de use of English o de lingüística. Easy as pie, right? Bueno, Rox nos aclara que lo que hay que hacer en este último caso son actividades como determinar la transcripción fonética o explicar la semántica de alguna palabra. En este punto, sin duda, podemos ver con claridad la temática y planteamientos de las tareas para este examen. Por último, está la parte didáctica, que antes computaba más en la puntuación global, pero que hoy en día solo vale un punto de la nota final. En esta tarea del examen se prueba el conocimiento didáctico que el aspirante a las oposiciones docentes debe tener con respecto a la práctica educativa, autores, leyes, metodologías y la manera de evaluar o planificar una clase, and so on. Con toda esta extensa explicación, como dice Rox, no wonder, no es de extrañarse que se negocie en el que este examen siga teniendo una carga tan alta en la media final de las oposiciones. Rox nos comenta también que tal vez esta dificultad del ejercicio práctico de inglés puede deberse a la gran cantidad de candidatos que hay en la convocatoria y este actúa como filtro, junto a otros requisitos que se necesitan para subir puntos en las oposiciones. Ahora para las recomendaciones que nos da Rox. Primero, nos dice que no es imposible, hay que tener eso en cuenta, no es imposible. Hay que también tener en cuenta que el aspirante a docente funcionario debe ser proficient o muy competente en inglés, ser altamente habilidoso y tener una capacidad mental de alerta alta, haciendo este tipo de examen. Así que, in a nutshell, habría que tener mucha inmersión lingüística y práctica continua para desarrollar las habilidades necesarias para poder desenvolverse en esta prueba. Así que ya saben, a consumir mucho contenido en inglés y a entrenar nuestra atención. En cuanto a la metodología del Salón de Idiomas, primero se entrega el examen al estudiante con un tiempo de antelación para que lo impriman, ya que la mayoría de las clases son online, pero no con demasiado tiempo para que no se arruinen la sorpresa, claro está. Una vez en clase se comienza con el ejercicio de listening y se proveen consejos y trucos como dónde estaba la pista y explicar por qué una opción es correcta y no otra. Todo esto siempre con mucho feedback, claro está. Lo siguiente es la parte del reading, en la que se combina el trabajo individual con el colaborativo, ya que estas clases son grupales. Se comparten las versiones de los alumnos respecto a semántica, pragmática, fonética, etc. Y se explican los conceptos para facilitar la comprensión y realización de la prueba. Finalmente, con respecto a la parte didáctica, Rox nos comenta que es bastante fruitful o productivo, ya que se comparten diferentes opiniones con los compañeros de clase y es enriquecedor para todo el grupo poder ver las alternativas y conocimientos extras de los docentes opositores, aparte de los contenidos que se aprenden de por sí en esta preparación. Para terminar con la entrevista, Rox nos recomienda que es muy importante entrenar e incluso practicar con bastante tiempo por adelantado con material en inglés original, es decir, no adaptado para exámenes oficiales, y trabajar nuestra agilidad mental a diario. Y bueno, ya eso sería todo por hoy. Ya terminamos con la entrevista y espero que les haya gustado. Si es así, háganoslo saber. Siempre recuerden que siempre si quieren conseguir más material para el ejercicio práctico o cualquier otro examen oficial, siempre pueden visitar nuestro canal en YouTube, así como visitar nuestras redes sociales como Instagram, Facebook o, ¿por qué no?, también pueden llamar y agendar una clase para ustedes mismos. Así que los espero para un próximo episodio and take care. Bye. Esto ha sido una producción del Salón de Idiomas. Se reservan todos los derechos.